Hello everyone, Zach here from the Carnival of Randomness on behalf of our sponsor, Upsitnik & Associates. In these unprecedented times, we reflect on our future, both in the next few weeks and months, but also the upcoming years and decades. And it's time to prepare for that future. Upsitnik & Associates has been contacted by many healthcare workers, as well as old and new clients, to prepare wills, powers of attorney, and advance directives, also called a living will. All of you need these documents. So don't say you don't have any assets to speak of, no children or other dependents. Regardless of the circumstances now, you will need a will for today and tomorrow. Al Upsitnik feels so strongly about having wills and other needed documents prepared that Upsitnik & Associates can prepare your will, power of attorney, and living will at no charge. You heard that correct. No charge until the end of 2020. No hidden fees or gimmicks. Al feels so strongly about planning for the future at this time that he is willing to assist you with your future. Trust Upsitnik & Associates, attorneys for 42 years, from the Supreme Court to Alaska and everywhere in between. You can find them online, upsitnikslaw.com, on Facebook, Upsitnik & Associates, or call them toll-free 1-866-391-3299 to prepare for your future.
Hey everybody, this is Rob on Carnival of Randomness, and I was going to have a couple drummers today, but they got jumped by wrestlers in the parking lot and thrown in the dumpster. So I decided, why not interview the wrestlers? They're probably more interesting. They could probably speak in more sentences. So here again, I am your host, the jet-flying, limousine-riding, kiss-stealing son of a gun, and if you like it or don't like it, listen to the podcast because it's the best thing going today. And we have, what are your names, wrestlers, sirs?
I'm the Masked Grappler.
And you?
I am the Rum-Pum-Pum-Pummeler.
You don't want to mess with
these guys. It took a long
guys.
time to think of that.
You don't want to mess with these guys in the dark alley. So we might as well talk wrestling. So for me, one of the things I got into it was there was a studio wrestling show in Rochester in the 70s, hosted by Dick the Destroyer Bayer, who's a famous wrestler out of Buffalo, very popular in Japan. He might be the best known masked grappler aside from you guys ever. Yeah. He was Dr. X for a while, and he actually had a park golf in Akron, Ohio, till he passed away a couple years. Akron, Ohio, Akron, Buffalo, till he passed away a couple years ago. A super sensational story, but I guess all I remember from this show, did any of you see it?
No, man, I wasn't here. I wasn't here in the 1970s.
I remember watching wrestling on Sundays. It was on Sundays or something?
This was on, I was so young, I don't really remember, but there's a couple things that stand out. Number one was that a young Greg Valentine was teaming with his dad, Johnny, as the Fargo brothers.
Yep, the Fargo.
And what happened was, people started noticing, well, for brothers, the age difference was really big. Yeah. So they sort of stopped that. And I remember Bobo Brazil was mentioned a lot.
I remember that, yeah.
And Dominic DiNucci.
Yeah.
But Dick the Destroyer Bayer, he would comment with the mask on. So the story I've heard, they did one line where some bad guy whacked him over the head with a garbage can. And he came back the next week, he had a bandage over the top of his mask. He wouldn't take it off. Yeah. But that's all I mean, obviously, studio wrestling, that's the problem with a lot of it. They didn't tape it. So there's no footage. I've tried to find footage for it. I've never been able to find it.
They taped over top of last week's show to save money on the tapes. And so large catalogs are missing and gone.
Like Pittsburgh wrestling. I've been dying to get footage of Tony Marino, the Batman.
Oh, I saw pictures
There's
of him.
pictures, and I guess he's still alive and lives in Florida.
Wow.
What I'm hoping is it turns out, remember the Pittsburgh Pirates video for Bing Crosby? What happened was he couldn't go to the game for Mazeroski. He had somebody come and shoot it on film. And they found it.
Oh, wow.
So I'm hoping there was a guy working at a studio. His kids loves wrestling, so he took footage and it's hiding up in an attic somewhere.
Yeah, that's what you have to find. Like Jim Cornette, the story about, what was it? All the, what tapes was it? It would have been Memphis.
Memphis.
I don't know. The television studio was getting closed down, or there was boxes and boxes of reel-to-reel videotape, and someone told on the street corner in a box, and it was all the catalog of a bunch of wrestling, and he went and saved it and converted it to DVD and sells it out of his house.
I guess what
now.
he does is he says, like, if you order one, he will make it for you.
Yes.
He doesn't, they're not pre-made. He will go and he will pick the matches and sit there and make them for you.
That's crazy that he has that kind of time.
I know, but for
Brother.
yes, but don't have sex with your brother. But for me, the real thing that got me into wrestling was midnights. My parents were very good about summer. They didn't care how long I stayed up school, go to bed at 8 or 9, but then stay up on the weekends, watch the monster movies, do whatever you want.
Right.
So there would be wrestling on Channel 9, WWOR, at midnight, and that's where I really got into the WWF.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen that stuff.
And I really broke into watching it just when superstar Billy Graham had won the title from Bruno.
Oh, 78-ish.
Yeah. Where he did the thing where he grabbed him and put the feet on the ropes.
Man, and they really dropped the ball with him because he was so popular because of his look and his charisma that he was that heel that was sort of turning babyface because the crowds just loved him. You know, like Stone Cold years later, they could have, and Vince McMahon Sr. didn't want to turn him face. He could have had so much money with Billy Graham if he turned him face, but no, he just wanted to put the belt. What did he put the belt back on?
Bob Backlund.
Oh, it wasn't back on Bruno?
No, Bruno was done. Bruno
that's
just
right,
said,
Backlund,
because what
yeah.
Bruno just said, he broke his neck against Stan Hansen in '75, and he said I'd be a champ for a year.
Yep.
Vince Sr. kept saying no. He finally said, enough, I can't do it anymore. But I guess the story goes, when they did the title turn, he told Graham, now look, I'm going to argue with the ref. You run out of here before the crowd kills you.
Yeah.
But I guess the whole story with that was they were going to groom back. They were looking for an All-American boy. They didn't want to have the ethnic champion. So,
That's right.
So in Florida, I guess Eddie Graham or somebody down there, Mike Graham, said, there's a guy down here who was Backlund.
Yep.
And they opted to take him, but they wanted to bring him up. They would tape shows. He would still wrestle there. They wanted to build him up for 9 months. And then Graham was going to drop the title. But what you said happened. Graham went over.
Yeah.
Huge. He sold out the arenas. There's pictures in wrestling magazines of him stopping to pose in New York.
Could have transitioned into face and rode that wave of money for a good long while.
And I guess what they said, he had a cage match with Bruno in Pennsylvania that Sunday, and they were talking about, okay, what's going to happen is we'll knock you out of the cage, you'll win back the title, that way Backlund won't win it. Mm-hmm. But I guess Bruno was going to go along with it, but he just had too much integrity where he just said, I guess he begged Vince Sr. to keep the belt on Graham, but Vince was just stubborn.
Yes.
So
Yep.
he just didn't go along with it.
I heard all those stories. I mean, there's so many of those stories in so many wrestling podcasts now are being told. Like old school wrestling fans like us, we just, the podcast world has really opened up a ton of stories. And, since kayfabe has been dropped, they can, completely tell all the smoke and mirror stories about the backgoings on, and it's really interesting for us old school
But I
fans.
think it would have been, they could have turned him, he was already getting cheered. If you watch his matches, people were cheering him anyways.
Yes,
They could have turned him really easy, but Vince was stubborn. He actually had a thing with Ivan Koloff. Graham had the angle picked out how to do it even.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
But
I did see a match at the War Memorial once, I think when I was in high school. It was like somebody Martinez, and
Pedro Morales, maybe?
I don't know. But one guy had like a chain. He had a big chain. He's freaking whacking this guy with a chain, and then we're all like, yeah!
There's a few chain gimmicks in wrestling. The Junkyard Dog had one, and Hercules Hernandez had
Bruiser
one. Bruiser Brody, yeah.
The Russians, too.
It
Didn't
was pretty
Koloff have the
interesting.
Russian chain or the Russian chain?
Yes. Nikita Koloff,
Yeah.
maybe?
So I have a question.
Yes.
I was doing some research on this, which is interesting because I was like looking back, tracing the whole thing, and it started in Sumeria. Wrestling started in Sumeria and in Greece, and back all like, and they used to wrestle naked and put
because they wanted to
oil
make
on
sure you
them
weren't a
with
space
sand
alien.
and all this weird
They always
shit.
wanted to make sure you weren't a space alien, so you had to show your wiener.
Yeah. but my question, what is the term heel, and why is it used, and where did that come from?
It all came from, a lot of wrestling slang comes from the carnival. Because what happens, wrestling would start off wrestling at carnivals.
Yeah.
And over time, I guess what happened, is, and because we've broken kayfabe, it started out where there were real legitimate matches. But they realized, okay, some of these are boring. Okay, let's take it so we sort of predetermine the outcome, so we build up so fans want to see it. So eventually what happened was they created characters where you have, they call the baby faces the good guy or the heel. The heel's the bad guy. And they work programs, obviously, where the heel beats the hell out of the good guy, and in the end, the face beats him. But they try, and it's called heat, all the terms like Broadway's a draw, like they had get heat means like try to piss the fans off.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
A shine is when the heel has been getting heat for a long time, and he whispers in the baby faces, go for a shine, and that's where he puffs up and gets some revenge, and the crowd goes nuts, and he gets a bit of a shine, The
classic would be Hogan, where they're beating the shit out of him, and sort of hulks up. Or Chief Jay Strongbow, where he goes into the war dance and starts beating the shit out of him.
Mm-hmm.
But also the thing, too, then with that is, what was I thinking of?
The other term is take a powder. That's when a one wrestler will just go outside the ring to create some distance, and so like in other words, the bad guy is beating up the good guy, and he's cheating to do it, so the crowd is getting heat on that, and so the good guy comes back in his shine, and the bad guy now can't handle it, so he jumps out of the ring to take a powder, quote unquote, to because to get away from him, and calls timeout.
It's all it begs off. But it's the term kayfabe. Fred Blassie in his book explains they don't really know exactly where it came from. It was two things. There was either a wrestler named Kayfabian who was a blabbermouth. So they said kayfabe because, like, if we were talking and somebody who was a mark, that's what they'd say, you're smart to the business or you're a mark. Mm-hmm. That we were talking, we go kayfabe, we start fighting and arguing with each other and everything. But the other thing was, he said it was either a blabbermouth or he was a deaf wrestler. Oh. They don't know for sure. It was in the 30s.
Wow.
But it's amazing to the lengths how you would go to protect kayfabe. The greatest story that's Tim Woods, Mr. Wrestling. He was on a plane in 1976 that crashed. Ric Flair was on it. Johnny Valentine was on it.
That's the famous crash, right?
It ended Johnny Valentine's career, but the story came out. Ric Flair broke his back. Mm-hmm. The story went out that Tim Woods was on the plane. But, okay, people, what's a good guy doing on a plane with these bad guys?
Yeah, right,
now, I would have just said, well, they kidnapped me.
Yeah, right.
So he wrestled 2 weeks later with a broken neck.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Just to protect it.
Yeah. That's how that's how risk life and limb to protect kayfabe.
Ole Anderson tells a story about every town they would go to, they'd get some marks, the local tough guy who thought he could wrestle. Yeah. And what they would do is, okay, we'll put you in the first match. So they come down, okay, who wins? Ole would say, what do you mean who wins? Yeah. Whoever wins. Yeah. And he said you would have people running, screaming away, going, it's real, it's real.
Yeah, that's funny. And back in the day, it was really, really hard to break into the business because of that. They really had to physically test you to see if you were tough enough, and if sometimes they would go so far as to break limbs.
Hulk Hogan, Hiro Matsuda, broke his leg.
Yeah, and then if you came back for more training after that, and then you took more punishment, eventually they figured that you want it bad enough, they can trust you, and then they would open up the secrets of the business of them, because it was like the mafia. It was like a closed family.
Both Bobby Heenan and Ole Anderson say the same thing. They did not know for sure until the first match.
Oh, yeah.
Ole went out there, they still didn't tell him. Then the guy sort of smartened him up in the ring.
Yeah. How many guys I've heard stories have gone out and training, and not until they're out there in the first match realize that, it's a determined ending, and they have to listen to the experienced guy. It's crazy.
But there was something I used to love about that people. I always compared it to a magic show, where you go to a magic show, the guy's got tape or he's hiding it behind his back, but when you're there, you believe it.
Oh yeah, man! I always lost myself in the spectacle and the theater, the performance theater that it is. I never once remember thinking it was legitimate sport, but I do also remember them taking you on such an emotional ride that you would like, oh, these two people really do hate each other. Look at this. And they didn't, or they might have, but they were working in such a way that made you really
what
think
they
it was
said
a real
was like
fight.
now, like say you went to a show here before the cancel bug that killed everything.
Yeah.
They said like now, like say for example, you went to see a show, you might go down to like the Radisson, you'd see these guys these hated enemies in the ring drinking beer together. Whereas and I actually remember a friend saw Seth Rollins and the guy he wrestled chumming it up. Where before you couldn't do anything near that.
No, you'll see
And
on Instagram them hanging out.
And what I would say too is I've called it, I use the pretentious term, I think it's physical theater, and it invokes all the things because you're creating a story. The idea, like you go to a boxing match, they might be boring, you might get knocked out. Mm-hmm. They want to create the best match possible for you and the best storyline. And there's a reason for everything, how they're trying to push somebody.
Yep.
And that's kind of, and before what you would do is you'd work as you guys know,
yes,
obviously working in the territories for years, you would build up your craft. Well, now they have these guys scripted.
I used to always really love the rants when they would get on their thing. I'm going to kill you, and if you come back...
And they would basically tell you, and I guess Roddy Piper said this, they said, okay, the match is here, promote it, you got 2 minutes, go.
Yeah.
And that's all. You'd have to come up with your own thing. Now it's all scripted, because then it was believable, too.
You got the real charisma of real people who knew how to deliver that stuff naturally, and when you get the scripted ones, it's no different than people. I'm getting tongue tied.
The term would be people have called it cosplay wrestling.
Yes,
nowadays. But there was one thing that stands out, and you're going to laugh because my dad would watch wrestling with me all the time, and he was a Fred Blassie man in terms of managers.
Cool.
But there was one thing on WWR where Chief Jay Strongbow loved Greg Valentine. They had the angle before Valentine was going to wrestle Backlund. We broke Strongbow's leg.
Yep.
And what happened was he had him in the sleeper. They knocked each other out with the referee. The Grand Wizard ran in, threw water on Valentine. So he got to put the figure 4 on Strongbow. And the Gorilla Monsoon's going to come out and break it up. Yeah. And they broke his leg. Yeah. So my dad goes, they put a splint on it. My dad goes, they put a splint on the wrong leg. And he's sitting there making faces and moaning. But the thing about it is, for the rest of the show, the audience was dead silent.
Yeah.
There was like a big 6-man tag team match. And I remember Dominic DeNucci, he had Bulldog Brewer by the ears in it. Nobody cared. They kept panning the Strongbow. They waited for the ambulance to come. The crowd was dead silent.
Wow.
Like they really fell for it. And whenever like a face would get creamed by a heel, then the crowd would be dead.
Just like when someone's really bad and carried off a football field and they haven't moved in 20 minutes, the crowd gets silent because it's real. And back then, it was real to everybody.
And you wonder, like, when he gets in the ambulance, they drive down a couple blocks. Okay, Chief, have a beer. But like masked wrestlers like you guys, the extent you would go to protect the identity, not only the luchadors, but like Mr. Wrestling too, Johnny Walker, who passed away earlier this year. Yeah. They said what he would do is he would drive in himself. He was a very indiscriminate looking guy. You wouldn't notice him. Had a bit of a beer gut, but balding prematurely, like some of us. And he would go drive in. He would park about 4 blocks away from the arena, stick the mask on, and come in because he didn't want anybody to see him. And I guess in Georgia, he would just go around. Like, can you imagine, not 2020, some dude coming in your convenience store wearing a mask, and everybody's, oh, hi, Mr. Wrestling, too.
No, they didn't mess around. The closest thing to someone guarding kayfabe that much in present days would be The Undertaker. How he was, even when kayfabe was dropped, he didn't drop until just recently when that special came out. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, The Last Ride.
Yeah, which is that's the first time you saw his real personality in all these years. It's when he decided to hang the boots up. And that's kind of old school wrestling fans wrestlers like me, who that's refreshing. That's refreshing to me.
Well, there's one guy, MJF, out there now. What he's done is he did an interview for his recent match. He stayed in character the whole interview.
Man, did you hear his podcast. It was a while
He's
ago.
great,
maybe
though. He's my favorite new wrestler.
like 2 years ago, he was on Stone Cold's podcast, and he pretty much stayed in character the entire time. And at the very end, Stone Cold says, and this was real. Stone Cold says, "Well, it's the end. You can tell all the people you can take the stairs or you can take the window, your choice." And MJF says, "I'll take the stairs." And he grabs this water bottle and squirts it, empties it across the table on Stone Cold. And Stone Cold, it's on this podcast, it flips out. You can hear him going across the table. And MJF runs out of the room. And that was real. And
I saw him one where he kicks a guy in the nuts and he runs away.
so Stone Cold to this day hates his guts because he did that.
But these guys were scary. And like one of the things is, too, one of the lost art of the foreign object. I used to love wrestlers who, like Baron Mikel Cicluna, who would have like a nail file hiding under his boot.
And the really talented ones who had nothing at all but would go into their trunks and pull something out, keep their hand balled up, and smash them in the, when the ref is distracted, and then put it back in their trunks. And really, they're manipulating nothing at all. Sometimes they have it look like they're, or the brass knucks which would be a bunch of tape.
That would be the one. I remember Captain Lou Albano hit Chief Jay Strongbow. People were throwing stuff in the ring. He picked up a piece of paper, knocked him out with it.
Yeah.
But the all-time was George the Animal Steel.
Oh, God.
And he would have.
I remember that.
And the thing about I met the Animal Jim Myers a few times when he came to Rochester.
Ooh.
Nicest guy, just still big, strong. But the idea was people were scared to death of him.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing, I guess, you know what the foreign object was?
A piece of chalk?
No, the foreign object was a Japanese can opener.
Oh, was
it? Really was. But what he would do is he'd hit you, he'd stick it in his mouth and go, and he'd go on the turnbuckle and you couldn't get it.
Wow. You ever seen what looks like a piece of chalk? Like a white stick of some sort? Yeah. It's quite a fine art. I've gotten pretty good at it myself.
Where do you hide your foreign objects? I mean, we're going to,
I mean, can you imagine that now? Because I remember when I went to that one match and people were throwing stuff in the ring. Here, hit him with this, and all. And it's like, I can't even imagine that now. How did you bring those things in? People just bring shit to that.
I'm blessed enough to have an incredible area around my crotchal area where there's a lot of stuff. I can fit a circular saw in there. I can fit a full towing chain in there. I can fit a table saw in there. I can fit a gallon of gasoline and 2 lighters in there. So when you step in the ring with me, anything can happen.
Well, the great fireballs were another one.
Oh, yeah.
Either the good fireballs in the face.
Man, that was that was such an art with the flash paper and the lighter concealed in the hand and the timing, and it was hideous when you saw a wrestler who wasn't practiced at it to try it, like say a Hulk Hogan at Halloween Havoc.
With the one with the
98.
What he tried to do, he lit it on fire.
Remember? There's been some horrific, and then when it works, it's pretty amazing looking. It's
the thing
quite
with Michael
spectacular.
P.S. Hayes, I guess there was one where I think whomever he wrestled did it. He came back, how do you burnt my beard.
Yeah. And they would classically get their eyebrows burnt off. And
I guess that happened to Ronnie Garvin. He came back, I'm sorry. No, it was great. It was great.
Yeah, It looked good.
Or the salt in the eyes was another one.
Yep.
Or like Abdullah the Butcher, who would just carve you up with a fork.
Oh my goodness, yeah. He gave a lot of my brothers hepatitis.
But the thing was, I saw the live shows when 31 UHF started broadcasting the WWF. They came back to Rochester. Mm-hmm. My dad we'd go every month. And I saw a lot of like Sergeant Slaughter.
The early 80s.
Yeah, early 80s. I saw Andre. This was like when I kind of figured wrestling might not be on the level. Sorry, guys. He wrestled Killer Khan, right?
Yeah.
And Killer Khan broke his leg.
Wink.
I was at the match. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
And what happened was Vince said he jumped and smashed his leg. Andre broke his leg getting out of his bed.
Yeah.
But and you ever, like, there wasn't, the internet phones or anything?
Yeah, of course not.
Because that's like George Animal Steel. Again, he was a teacher. And he put the mask on as the student, but he would wrestle, nobody would know. And I guess people might get a wrestling magazine, and they'd say, hey, this looks like you. And he'd just say, you think I'm that ugly?
Yeah.
But who were some of your favorites growing up? Who inspired you to get in the biz?
Oh, my goodness.
Not just one, obviously.
No, well, of course, early on, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan always is, his charismatic craziness. He wasn't a crazy good worker, but I discovered early World Class and the Von Erichs, and they were quite amazing, even though that their whole story ended tragically. Ricky Steamboat, some of the greats, like we were talking about, Superstar Billy Graham, T-bone steaks, protein shakes, and barbell plates. That's what his
the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour.
Yeah.
But I guess he was a preacher for real beforehand, so he learned how to do that lingo.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess Dusty hung around with them, so he got some of that.
And it was Muhammad Ali as well. He stole some of his jive from that. He was, but Jesus, I like so many. Jake the Snake was amazing with his promos.
I have a story for you too. I actually met him at a Comic-Con a couple years ago. And one of my friends was there. He was out smoking a cigarette. Mm-hmm. So one of my friends asked him, "Hey Jake, where's your snake?" "It's in my pants." But he's
in my trousers.
When you meet,
brother.
The thing is, I've met some wrestlers, and even if some of the ones like Chris Jericho, they look small on TV, you meet them, they're all big. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Hart, actually, he's a big guy.
Is he?
Yeah.
I never had the opportunity to meet him. He he manages, most of the people he manages are colossal, so.
But they're all big. They're all meaty, like Greg Valentine.
Yeah.
Again, Jericho showed up to sign his Fozzy albums at Record Archive, and you see him, and he looks small compared to the other guys, but he's a big, meaty guy.
Right, yeah. He's like but back in the day, as far under 6 foot as he is, he wouldn't have gotten a shot. Went back in the land of the giants. Now it's more average sized guys, as long as they're athletic, are getting it and have that charisma to be on TV.
I can attest to one thing too. I saw Hulk Hogan live once. It was first year 1984. He was wrestling the Iron Sheik with Fred Blassie as the guest referee.
Wow,
Iron Sheik.
And I remember literally he stuck his head out of the locker room. Sold out crowd. They went bananas. Mm-hmm. When he came out, the frenzy of that crowd, and he would, like Superstar Billy Graham would say, and I think the same thing applies to Hulk. Graham would say, "I'm not a wrestler, I'm an entertainer." And
Absolutely.
Hulk had the charisma, knew how to work it.
Mm-hmm. He had about 5-6 moves, but still
do the pose.
Yeah, it was. He certainly knew how to take the fans on a ride emotionally, especially back in the day when they ate up that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but also we have to mention, I just found out from my friend Chuck that Ernie Ladd has connections to Rochester. I guess Ernie has family here.
You just told me that.
Yeah, but the big cat, though, he was, and you have to remember, Ernie, I would say, should be in the Football Hall of Fame. He was that good with the Chargers.
Sure, why not, man? And then along with his wrestling career, it's just amazing feat of accomplishment, and to be a giant, and to be, what was he, 6'9"?
Yep, the big cat.
Yeah, 340 pounds at his lightest, probably. I didn't know he had Rochester connections.
See, I did not know that either, but I guess he has family here.
Is that his shoot name, Ernie Ladd?
I think it's his real name.
Okay.
He played football under it. So.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Because there's a lot of football players that go into wrestling. Bronco Nagurski wrestled.
That's right.
Wahoo McDaniel.
Yeah, who was he? He wasn't really Native American, was he?
He was. The story with Wahoo, he said that people asked him, and he said, my dad was 1/16. I'm German, but my dad was 1/16, but he really pushed that ancestry. The one Native true native I know is Tatanka.
Yeah.
Who's Lumpy Tribe, as Bobby Heenan would say.
He was the WWF wrestler who was Italian but wrestled. Chief J.
Joe
Strongbow.
Scarpa from New South Jersey.
Yeah. Chief J. Strongbow, that's right. And the Youngbloods, Jay Youngblood and his brother, they were real Native American.
They were, I didn't know. I remember the wrestling magazines, he teamed up with Steamboat a lot, Jay
Youngblood, I'm watching that right now in Mid-South on my network. They were great tag team. He left us way too early.
Yeah, I know. The only thing, too, is that whenever you were one of those wrestlers, you knew you were going to get jumped and the feathers were going to get stuffed down your mouth.
With doused in Cairo syrup and covered in pillow feathers.
There's actually a famous, this is a famous storyline. It was Mr. Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA were the tag team champs, and Jim Cornette's Midnight Express. So there's a story. They jump him. Yeah. They whack Mr. Wrestling 2 over the head with like they're supposed to be a blackjack or something. They get Magnum TA and they tar and feather him.
Yeah, I just saw that. Saw that. And then he get revenge and tar and feather Mr. 2. And that was right at the end of Mr. 2's wrestling career. He was sort of trying to transition out of it.
And watch how they sell it, too. They come out, Mr. Wrestling 2 still holding his head, Magnums and feathers going on about, I've never been more disgraced in my life.
And then that's the two... then 2 brought in his new protege, which ended up being Hercules Hernandez.
It's Mr. Wrestling. And he became Mr. Wrestling.
Yeah, and I just saw Hercules Hernandez go from that to world class as Sunshine's new secret bodyguard. Anyway, going down. Good. What do you think about all this, Greg?
Well, I'm not...
Hey, don't give his real name away.
Greg the Grappler.
I'm not a real big... like I said, I went to a couple when I was younger.
You prefer to be in the ring.
I watched it on TV a lot. But, I never followed it as much, but I always was fascinated by it. I kind of wonder why boxing never went that way, why boxing is more legit, and when wrestling actually...
Well, they had fixes from the mob.
Actually change... When did wrestling ever change, and who was the architect that okay, we're going to make more theater out of it?
It started, I guess, from what I've read in the history, again, they started at the carnivals, the sideshow at the carnivals. And a lot of times what they would do is they would have, like, guys in the audience because they beat the champ. And it just got boring, I guess. Like you put a hold on a guy and hold him there for 10 minutes. So they started spicing it up because they realized it brings the fans back. So it's sort of metamorphosized. And then it became in the 50s, it was TV. What happened? Wrestling, because it was very, very cheap.
Yeah.
So that's when Gorgeous George and they started doing all these flamboyant guys.
In the Carl Gotch era, matches would sometimes go 2.5 or 3 hours.
Wow.
And there would be no breaks. Guys are just wrestling around, and there's technically, and they would draw thousands and thousands in these makeshift stadiums, but you can't see what's going on. If it's going, and guys are rolling around for 3 hours on the mat, and you're way up in the nosebleeds or whatever.
Right.
So, they just started having
exaggerate and make it more flat, more.
And obviously, like during after wartime, what did we have? The classic German villains, the evil Nazi guys.
Right.
So the good old patriot guys could beat the hell out of them.
We brought the Nazi villains and of course the Japanese villains.
Well, always, I guess Killer Khan. Go back to him. He's Japanese. I guess he became a Mongolian villain because he didn't want to be the stereotypical guy from Japan who throws the salt in your eyes.
Yep,
because they would all throw the ceremonial salt, which is probably like baby powder or something.
Probably, or flour or something. He's a quite an accomplished sushi chef now, I think, and has a successful restaurant in Japan, Killer Khan.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep. Still with us.
Oh, that's good.
It's amazing, huh?
Yeah, but that's the only time I saw Andre the Giant. He was big.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember him, yeah. We can cycle this back to geekdom with the Superman episode, No Holds Barred.
Yeah.
About the wrestling match.
Yes, true.
Are you familiar with that, John?
No, I don't know what that is.
There was an episode of the old George Reeves show where these guys
with the
were
Swami?
wrestling. Yeah. And he had this move called the Paralyzer. And what the guy would do is that this Swami guy or Indian guy, he was teaching these guys to use pressure points.
Okay.
So he'd bring them down, and it was like, all right, nobody can beat me. I got the paralyzer. And it was like,
the guy would challenge him, just get him in the neck, and they go,
So it was a very, I mean, and to watch that when you're younger, it's like real interesting because I mean, this was like full blown old school 1951 wrestling, you know, and they're watching it on this little TV, you know, like all this
and they're
stuff.
like, I think one guy comes in, he's like a college wrestler, and he's going to challenge him, and they're like, don't do it. And doesn't Superman train him how to beat the thing so when he puts it on him, it doesn't hurt him?
Wow, I'm going to have to look that up.
Oh, that's a good one, though. It's
It's a good
first year Superman 2 was very hardcore crime. It wasn't like how it became.
The old George Reeves one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I actually been watching the Kirk Allen ones, too. I see what you mean about flying.
Yeah, they cheaped out on that one. It's way better than the Batman ones, though. The Batman
I just watched
ones
the first one from 43.
Yeah.
But the other thing, too, is another guy we've talked about before is Haystacks Calhoun.
Big man.
From Morgan. And Bruno Sammartino lifted him off the ground.
Yeah. I think without his approval, even. I think that's how strong Bruno was, because he didn't even need Haystacks.
No, and the story goes, they said he was 605, and usually they lie. They did lie. They weighed him afterwards. He was 645.
Oh,
did you hear about his what he would start the day with?
It
was like, I think it was like 4 dozen eggs, steak, a couple pots of coffee.
Yeah. 3 or 4 piglets.
Could you imagine? It's like, and he wasn't even the biggest wrestler. I think they said the McGuire twins, I guess they were bigger than Yokozuna when they wouldn't let him wrestle anymore.
Those are the dudes on the mini bikes in the Guinness Book of World Records. That famous photo, the McGuire twins. Yeah, and they would have handlers who would bathe them because they couldn't reach areas.
Harley Race started. That's how Harley Race broke in the business. He drove Happy Humphrey around because Humphrey was too fat. Fat was too fat to reach the thing. But I guess he would have to give him baths.
Yeah.
But they said Happy Humphrey was actually a really nice guy. He holds afterwards the Guinness Book World Records for most weight loss.
Yes, yeah. He came right down to normal size.
Well, like, for him.
And then ballooned back up before he died, actually.
But it's amazing, though. But Harley just did that. It's how he broke into business.
He would take a sponge on a stick and get all those indiscreet areas. I heard him talking. Like, I would make that stick 8 feet long.
That would be like over here. Go on. Get me on the back. You rub my back for me. Can you rub my back?
Yeah, get the great butt cleft for me, please.
But do you have one favorite wrestler? And again, I'm not big on the who's your favorite list, but like in terms of like one who would be in your top 5 for sure.
My goodness, that is so hard for me, man.
See, that's why I hate the number one question.
Or the Mount Rushmore question.
I never do that either.
Because
we'll skip that for a second. Do you have a favorite manager? Somebody?
Oh my goodness, I guess Jim Cornette, man. Jim Cornette or Bobby Heenan. But Jim Cornette claims Bobby Heenan is the greatest manager of all time, and he might be correct because Bobby Heenan was an amazing wrestler before he became a manager, and so he still had those skills and took crazy bumps. Gift of gab, so instantly witty, great heel. But it's either toss-up either Jim Cornette or Bobby
Did you ever
Heenan.
There's a story about him, too, but I think my favorite would still be Captain Lou Albano.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
How could you go wrong? But there's a story, I guess, with Bobby Heenan where they had the gimmick, the bully, and the WWF, where he's this goofy guy with the derby and a mustache.
Yes, I remember him.
Picking on people.
He wasn't around long.
No, but it gets Big Bully Busick, and I guess somebody complained about him during the anti-bullying campaign, and they don't realize it's a character. Mm-hmm. But I guess Heenan's, there was a little girl in the audience, he would dump popcorn over her head. It was Heenan's daughter. And I guess Heenan's daughter went to Vince and said, I'm not doing it for 50 anymore, I'm doing it for 75. And Heenan would say, you're going to get me fired.
Awesome. Way to go, little girl.
But some of those characters that came out in the early 90s from Vince were utterly cartoon.
Oh,
because that's where you had NWA, WCW, where these guys really wrestled, like Flair, Steamboat, Dusty, and then you had the cartoon guys.
And they were legitimate guys. The Goon, was from World Class. What was he? That fake hockey player, the Goon. What was his?
I just heard. I don't.
He was a Texas wrestler. Oh man.
Well, what happened, I guess, in the WWF too, they're running low on talent in the mid '90s. So what they did, they brought back all these veterans and just packaged them as these weird characters. But these guys, because like Skinner was Steve Kieran.
Steve Kieran. I couldn't believe his physical transformation from a pretty boy to that Skinner dude.
Would spit the tobacco off.
Yeah, it was so disgusting. I couldn't. Another thing, I mean, it's a much newer gimmick, but I would always have to turn away from the freaking TV is whenever the boogeyman
all the worms,
worms in his mouth. I was like, oh my goodness, how could I can't even look at that. He would chew up fistfuls of live worms and then spit them out.
I think there was was he Dewey Robertson? I think it was Dewey Robertson. He was like a regular
Dewey Robinson, the missing link.
Yeah, he was a missing link. But I do remember the one thing too, and I had a laugh, is that this is how far it went over the time Earthquake crushed Jake Snake.
Yes.
And I heard people tell me, oh, he really did it.
Yeah.
And he came up with the snake burgers. Yeah. I guess there was a pound of hamburger in there that he sat on.
Okay.
Ouch.
It made like a spot on the bag. That's probably the hamburger.
Yeah, later he shit himself.
Yeah.
It's like,
right.
Because there's been a couple of those,
That's
too.
classic.
It's like Stone Cold said, remember a guy named Yokozuna? He slammed me and I shit my pants.
Yeah. There's a lot of stories like that. Hopefully you're wearing dark trunks on that night, not yellow ones.
Right.
There's just one match I had back in Toledo with 4 monkeys and a bear, and I don't want to go into it, but there's an incident similar to that.
Well, that's funny too, where they have like the wrestling bears and all those.
Oh my goodness!
The midget wrestling too.
Yes, that was, man. Those guys were so talented. I mean, you really don't see. You really don't see that, probably because it's considered exploitive by today's standards. But some of those guys made incredible. Lord Littlebrook, remember him?
Sky Low.
Lord Littlebrook was like he was a contact for all of them for a lot of years. Sky Low. What was the other one? The Japanese guy.
Little Tokyo.
Little Tokyo. Remember this WrestleMania 3 match with King Kong Bundy and smashing one of them, and all the little people turned on King Kong Bundy and left with the face? That was funny.
Well, that's the thing too, is you forget they were really good athletes.
Oh, they were.
And they didn't. The thing was, I'm sure that a lot of them made plenty of good. I always remember Skylar Lowe looked like my Uncle Art. So I always think of that.
Some left Uncle Art in the dryer too long.
You know what? Hey, it was my Uncle Art. We put him he went in the dryer when he was drunk, and he came out as Skylar Lowe.
Yeah.
But you watch it really now as much? Does anybody follow it?
I don't watch the current product nearly as much as I once did. I have the network, and I absorb myself in all the back catalog and watch it chronologically. Actually, I'm reliving the Monday Night Wars right now, and then watching the pay-per-views because back in the day I didn't have the money to buy all those pay-per-views.
Yeah, and my thing was like for the Monday Night Wars, I got out of taking my dog to obedience school because it was on Monday night, so I could watch the Monday Night Wars. And I remember how popular, because Mick Foley came to Walmart by me, and there was a line you could see down the block.
Oh yeah,
it was incredible.
No, but I watch the current pay-per-views. I don't have cable anymore, so I don't watch Raw. Raw got to be a long 3-hour commitment anyway, and I'm not, and it's just not riveting like it once was to me.
No, and AEW, it started out promising, and it went downhill where it became so. They don't know what they're doing in terms of heels and faces. Yeah. It's cartoon. It's unbelievable in terms of some of these guys. But again, I think MJF's very good. But what I do is I go on YouTube is my friend for old classic wrestling.
Mm-hmm. That is a great one. That is you can get so much there. I mean, you want to watch the match where Big Van Vader got his eye taken out by.
What does he do? He just puts it right back in and goes on.
Yeah. Well, who was he wrestling that day?
Stan Hansen.
Stan Hansen knocks his eyeball out.
I guess the funny part, Stan, I watched some interviews with him. Seems like the nicest guy in the world, but I guess he was very nearsighted.
Totally.
And I guess what he would say, he'd whisper, "I going to lariat you.
No, he couldn't see anything in the ring once he took his glasses off. And that's how he was wildly swinging his cowbell on the end of the rope, and it caught Vader.
You can see it. He literally puts it right back in.
And uses his masks to basically hold it in for the rest of the match.
But then you read about like the pranks these guys, because I was reading Ole Anderson's book, and I guess Gene Anderson used to like to sneak around and shit in people's shoes.
Oh, yeah.
But some of the pranks, because he would get bored on the road.
Or bags, or simple ones like padlock all the loops to your favorite pair of jeans together, the belt loops.
Or crumbs, like put cracker crumbs in your hotel bed.
Yeah. I hear that on the road, the ribs are much less. The younger generation, my generation and Greg's generation, we still will pull a rib on it. I'll short sheet his bed when we're in, when we're down in.
Or if he has to stop to take a pee on the road, he'll just drive off.
Yeah, right. He'll say, "Let's stop here for a 6-pack," and I'll come out with a 6-pack of Mountain Dew, and he'll be like, "What?" That's the kind of ribs us old school wrestlers play on each other.
But Dave, I guess you didn't touch Harley Race's cold beer after the show, though. You didn't touch Wahoo's headdress. He said but Harley liked to drink cold beer after the show. That would be the one thing you didn't mess with Harley.
No, he would come out. His beers would be on ice in his cooler in his car, and if you were his riding partner, Stone Cold was his riding partner in his WCW days for a little bit. He would say Harley would finish his beer, throw it in the back seat, hold his hand out, and you would have to get a beer, open it, and have that opening mouth thing right in his hand at the right place where he can put it right back up to his lips, and that would go for the whole ride.
But it's the best.
And
drink.
Smoking cigarettes.
One of the drinking. I guess he would drive 100 miles an hour if he was driving too. Yeah. He was like a crazy. He got into multiple car crashes. Unfortunately, his wife died in a car crash. She got into boating. But he would drive like 80, 100 miles an hour in winter.
Wow.
But one of the best. I mean, Andre the Giant, of course, was like the massive drinker. But he was traveling with Dick the Destroyer one time, and Andre says, "Boss, we need beer. Pull over." So he gets he gets a case. Yeah. Andre, he says, "I have 3." Andre drinks the case.
Yeah.
So he goes, "Boss, we need more beer." Pulls over. Yeah. So they get another case. He has like 1. Yeah. Andre drinks the case. Yeah. "Boss, we need more beer." Pulls over, gets another case. Andre drinks it. And the Destroyer ends the story. And he didn't have to pee once.
Yeah, I know. He has a bladder the size of Nebraska.
And the one time, I guess he didn't want to go to bed. He's at a bar. They're saying, "We got to close." "Okay, if you drink, we'll stay open." "Give me 48 martinis. Line them up." I guess he passed out. They put a piano sheet over his head.
Oh, well, that's probably the very famous story from Cincinnati in the 80s. By 83, I was in high school, and it's probably has that story you're talking about. He passed out in a lobby where all the wrestlers stay from drinking, and they couldn't rouse him, they couldn't move him, so they put tablecloths over him and he slept on the couch in the lobby, and then they discovered this huge puddle under the couch because he had peed himself, and it's just this expansive puddle. It must be the story you're talking about, because my high school friend was worked at this hotel and was the first-hand experience, told me about it. It's unbelievable.
Amazing. But this has been you guys have any matches coming up?
Yes, I do. I have a match at the Sri Lankan barn. I'll be taking on 2 goats, 4 weak men, and a pastor in a Russian cage fire match. And the winner gets an ice cream cone.
And look at it. Look on those weird channels on cable. It's one of those weird channels like up in 300. You can get it. You can buy it on pay-per-view or stream it. And I think before you beat up that drummer, does he have any gigs anymore? The Greg guy?
Well, I'm supposed to do one tonight at Smokin' Joe's in the city at 5 o'clock.
Sweet.
And I have a gig at Abilene Wednesday with a soul singer that I work with once in a while, Latrice Fulton, and so we're going to do that.
It's still, as we can say about music, it gets where obviously it's tough times and there's still some going on and the weather's going to get cold. All I can say is wait and see.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I was just on a cruise with Adriana, and she's playing on there, and it was at the end. I give her and the band credit. I've seen bands like Big Sandy played Garden Vibes, and they had to stop because it was dark. Mm-hmm. It was freezing. Her guitar was not. Our guitars do not act well in the cold.
Right.
But they played on till the end. It was like, okay, if this goes down, it's like the Titanic. But we're gonna see. It's a tough time for everything. So you can go out if places I've been to. They've been very good about trying to be careful. Try to tip. Do what you can. We're all in this. Hopefully, it'll be over eventually.
Yeah.
Well, we're not down for the count. We're gonna kick out of this situation and come back for the shine.
But we'll have to come back and do a part 2 of this sometime when you're back in town, because I know you're all over traveling the country.
Yeah, yep, that's right.
But there's only one way we can end this. My good friend Steve Litvak, who's regular on the show, how could we not end it without playing a song from the Tombstone Hands, Rumble, Link Ray's Rumble? So with that, thanks, you mask guys. I forgot your names already. I'll see you. So, woo! Bye.
This is Rum-Pum-Pum-Pummeler signing off.
Thunder time!
Nah.